Hello and welcome back to Revender Sports and video 2 of this Tommasini Columbus XCR, so a stainless steel tubing bike that I did a video, so now this is video 2. I broke down almost the whole bike and then I realized, oh, I forgot to talk about this and I forgot to talk about that. Additionally, I got a couple of comments over the weekend and so I wish to address them. So the first thing is, I didn't even talk about these Elite stainless steel cages. Now, I like these cages. I like the look of them. So inox right here means stainless. But the challenge is, and this is hard to do with one hand, so hopefully the bike won't. You don't get really good purchase on your bottles, right? So this is a very light pull, and so you can eject bottles if you're not paying attention. So you might say, oh well, why don't you just bend those in a little bit, because you should be able to. Well, I've had a couple of these break on me, so bending them in to get more grip on the bottles just doesn't work. So I've left them the way they are. I'm just a little bit more careful through potholes and areas like that, cracks in the road. And also one of the things you have to do is just, keep an empty bottle in the back. So, which will happen, right? Over time, you got 2 full bottles, you finish this one, switch it to the back, that'll be fine. But yeah, if you're only gonna ride with 1 bottle, say you're pretty close to the end of the ride, so you don't have to fill up both bottles on your way home, then obviously the empty bottle in the back. It's what you would do anyway, but I just thought I'd point that out, because the fuller the bottle is, the more it will eject. Next thing I didn't talk about was external cabling. So this is the rear derailleur, the other side's got the front derailleur, and then underneath here is the rear brake. So this is nice, external. I didn't put the little donuts in there. I'll get them next time I replace the cable. And then down here is external for the rear derailleur. So I like external cables on bikes. It's just so much easier to work on. I'm not bothered in the least by this. People obsess about, oh, we got to tighten that up. We got to get, internal routed handlebars and internal routed frames and I don't know, they claim aerodynamic issues, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, if you're worried about this tiny little thing affecting your aerodynamics, you've got bigger problems. Your head, your shoulders, your body, all of that is over 85% of the aerodynamic drag. So I wouldn't worry about these silly little cables. Most of us, and I'm including myself, most of us are not traveling at 50K, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anyway, external cabling, absolutely beautiful. It's so easy to work on this bike. There's no stress when you need to replace a cable. And let's talk about it. It's mechanical, so you don't have to worry about E-tube wires and stuff like that. I've got a bike in the shop now that I'll probably do a what's in my stand, work stand, or what's in our stand today. Sorry. His battery kept coming unplugged, and it's all internal, and he couldn't figure out what was going on. And I had to take the crankset out, bottom bracket out, and then inside that bottom bracket there's only these small little holes to access his E-tube wiring and his junction B that is buried inside there. It's just dumb. Internal cable routing, internal Di2 wiring, all that stuff. Silly. Alright, so that's the external cabling, which I love. The other thing, oh, and by the way, the newer one will then, you got to drill holes in a frame to run the cables through, the housing through. You know, some bikes have full housing, like that Haley bike that I worked on had full housing from here all the way to the back derailleur, rear derailleur. External cables, much better. The new one has internal, and then it's also disc brake now as well. But I like it this way. Next thing to talk about is the Brooks saddle. So I had in the first video, the honey-colored saddle, and I decided, you know what, let's just go black and black. The Velominati will be happy. And so if you don't know what that is, go look up the rule for that. But we're gonna get back to the positioning of this saddle because, well, there's always one out there. But I just decided I'm gonna put the black saddle on and then put the honey-colored saddle on my fixed gear. So this is, and I rode this now 2 rides, so Saturday and Sunday. Saturday we did a 35-mile climb that took us from like 600-700 foot elevation, took us to 8,000, basically 7901, with a dip here, dip, and then, you know, just a long 35-mile climb. A lot of time seated, in other words, and the position felt fantastic. And then the following day, more of a recovery ride. So that was 8,000 feet and 35 miles, and then we descended and got another like 400 over the rollers. And then on Sunday, we did another very popular ride, Glendora Mountain Road to Glendora Ridge Road to Baldy Village. And that was about 24 miles, and I think it was like 4,500 feet. Can't remember, 4,600 feet. Anyway, so I felt very, very good in my position. So let's talk about one of the questions that was asked. They're asking, okay, well, what's the ride quality, or what do you think about this bike to the Ritchie and all that? Now, here's the thing. The Ritchie is possibly one of the best riding bikes at any price point. Steel bikes at any price point, and even carbon, in my opinion. So it's a high bar to meet. Now, this bike, I believe, was just designed completely different. So no sloping top tube. The seat tube is significantly thicker than the Ritchie Logic seat tube. The seat post as well, much thicker. So the seat post on the Ritchie is a 27.2. And I've mentioned this in other videos where if you want the best ride quality that you can, focus on your seat post, or focus on a geometry that will allow more of a seat post to show, so it has more of a cantilever effect. So this is a very stiff seat tube design and a seat post design. So there's a challenge there. What do you want your bike to do for you? Do you want it to be a stiff, racy type of bike, or do you want it to be a comfortable type of bike over all terrain, or all pavement? Let's just not even talk about graveling. So this bike is stiffer than my Road Logic, and for some people that's what they want. It just depends what day, where I'm riding, what type of pavement I'm riding. And you're going to be limited because the 25 tire is what this fork was designed for. This is a 28 tire, and I got a little bit of rub, either, I don't know, maybe in the corners or maybe up out of the saddle. I got a little bit of rub on the tire, so I'm gonna have to put a 25 up front. The 28 in the back was fine. But see, with the Ritchie, you can put a 30 back there, even though it's rated for 28. And the new frame I've got coming in is rated for 30, which logically, I think I can put a 32 back there. So these are two different frames. Just because they're steel, both of them, doesn't mean that they even ride remotely similar to each other, because they really don't. This is a much stiffer bike. It's got a much stiffer head tube and seat tube area, so you'll have to always consider that as you ride this bike and what terrain you ride it over. Tire choice and PSI is going to be also a very important thing on this bike. Okay, next thing is, when you look at the Cinelli makes an XCR bike as well, and the Cinelli is a different bike altogether as well. So it's got a sloping top tube, and then, but the bottom bracket is I'm sorry, not the bottom bracket, the tapered head tube. So it's got a big bearing in the bottom headset bearing. And again, I mean, this is the thing that destroys ride quality on bikes. If people want stiff racing bikes and that's all that's important to them, then you should stick with a 1-inch steel fork or a 1 1/8 carbon fork. Anything above that is going to destroy your ride quality. You can pause, you can rewind. That is the truth. If you look at the way a fork is designed, a carbon fork is designed, it's to a point where they're 3 times as strong as they need to be so that they don't fail in a crash, which then means you are losing ride quality. So that's why a 1-inch fork is a phenomenal quality riding fork, and a 1 1/8 carbon is about the closest that you're going to get, but it's never going to be as good as a steel 1-inch fork. Well, anyway, so that's the thing about the Cinelli. It's going to have a much bigger head tube, so that's not going to be comfortable for you. But they do go with much smaller round tubes, so that might actually help. You know, everything that you look at in these bikes, you have to decide what do you want that bike for? What type of riding? So, you know, if you want a stiff headset because you're up out of the saddle sprinting, then that's where you go. Okay. As far as ride quality between my Tommasini steel fork, 1-inch steel fork bike, this Tommasini, and then the Road Logic, I would probably say that the Tommasini with the 1-inch fork is the most comfortable of the bikes. I would say that this is the most rigid of the performance bikes. And then I would say like the Ritchie Road Logic is kind of like right in between both of those bikes. It has incredible ride quality. It can be ridden hard. It can be sprinted in group rides, uphills, steep, 20% grades. So, again, horses for courses. You have to decide what you want out of your bike and what bike is going to do that the best. All right. Lastly, we're going to talk about my fit, because if you remember in video 1, I said there's always one who's out there who now thinks he's a better fitter and thinks he knows how my bike should be set up. So I always laugh at those people, but instead of clapping back, because it is social media and that's typically what's out there, they're trolling you, I decided let's make a positive outcome out of what could be negativity. So let's talk about this. Now, I mentioned in the previous video that this saddle gives you an optical illusion on where it is sitting. Now, for that particular commenter, he said my saddle was too far forward. He said my stem was too long, which ridiculous. This is only a 110. He said my stem was too long, my saddle was too far forward, and it was too high because my hips were rocking. So I cannot understand for the life of me why anyone gives a hoot if my hips are rocking. Why do you care? And I don't mean that in a you know, a snappy way. But what do you expect is going to happen if my hips are rocking? So what? There are no injuries to report. I just did a 756 mile bike ride / race, 1226K. I have no injuries. Why does it matter if hips rock or don't rock? It doesn't matter. But here's another reason why this uplift photography person, which just seems like it's counterintuitive what his name is, uplift photography. He's like a Debbie Downer, actually. This saddle gives. See that? So if you see my hips rocking or there's some type of bounce, it's because the saddle gives. I just don't understand why people think they need to give me fitting advice. You have no idea what my medical history is. You have no idea if I have fused vertebrae, if I've got I don't know, pulled hamstrings and I need to have my saddle in a certain position. You just don't know anything about me for you to give fitting advice. But like I said, we're gonna make lemonade out of lemons. So number one, why he might see my hips rocking is because the saddle gives. That's the benefit of a leather saddle. Number two, he said the saddle was too far forward. What he didn't realize, and I explained in the first video, is that it's an optical illusion. These rails, if you look at them, you cannot even start clamping down your saddle until you get to here, right? So all of that is not anywhere where you clamp your saddle. You can't clamp it. Let me give you a better angle. See that? So when this bows out like this and then makes the turn again, from there, that's when you can start clamping your saddle. And then back here, same thing. It goes here and then starts to flare out. Let me show you from behind. So you can only clamp this saddle from here to here, right? Now I don't have a measuring tape with me, but that is the only place you can clamp the saddle. So from here to here. So in effect, this saddle is pretty much centered in the rails, okay? So I have no idea what this person's talking about. All of that is not clampable, okay? Now, one other thing about this saddle. As I mentioned in that first video, you have to raise the nose a little bit because of this. Now, because, as I said, we're making lemonade out of lemons. In other words, the negativity of this other video poster. My saddle is, depending on the seat tube geometry of the bike, my saddle is typically 6 centimeters to 6.5 centimeters behind the bottom bracket, which is pretty much where this saddle falls with the plumb bob. So this person either does not know enough about how Brooks saddles are supposed to be set up, doesn't know anything about this particular model of Brooks saddle. I don't know, but most of you should know by now, when you come on and make comments about, oh, you should do this and you should do that, I laugh at you. I don't pay any attention in the sense of I'm not going to change my bike fit because of you. But, you know, I'd rather do an educational portion on my video instead, with the issues, and finger quote on issues, with the issues that this uplift photography person pointed out. They're not issues. This is, and by the way, there's no perfect bike fit, but this bike fits me very, very, very well. And, you know, I just built it up Friday and took it out for two 6-hour plus ride and I think it was a 4-hour plus ride, all climbing. I guess the first day was like 80 8,700 feet, and the next day was like 5,700 feet. I don't know, 14,000 feet of climbing. And I have no aches and no pains. So what is this person talking about? Honestly, no clue. So remember, do not go around talking about people's bike fits on their videos, because you don't know anything about their medical history. You have no idea why and how that fit came about, unless that YouTuber or whoever is saying, hey, take a look at my bike fit and tell me, what suggestions do you have? I've been trying to get comfortable for 6 months on my new bike and I've not been able to do it. At that point, they are open and receptive and want your input. Other than that, you don't know anything about them. So mum's the word, be quiet. Leave them to their own bike fit. And again, so what if my hips rock? That does not mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't cause any aches or pains or lack of power transfer or nothing. So please, mind your own beeswax, or whatever the expression is. Okay, so that's video number 2. I wanted to address a few things that have come up in comments, and a couple of things that I need to change, and then that's about it. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you up the road.